In a world within our world, they've created a world unlike any other world.
Dungeons and Dragons. And a game like D&D fuels their imagination and makes them feel special.
The ogre is amused by your joke and allows you to pass.
Dad, I'm just curious. What is it about Dungeons and Dragons that suddenly leapt out at you at age 60?
Dungeons, it'd be the dungeons.
Just what I love about role-playing games is being told exactly what to do.
Me too. You should introduce yourselves.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to 93.3 CFRU, Guelph Community Radio, and I am your host, Mike the Birdman Ashkui, and welcome to The Spellbook, the TTRPG show that knows you're probably fudging your rolls. That's okay. We like the rule of cool, but I'm not alone as I trek through unusual new lands to the Spellbook. I'm joined from the Feywild city of London, Ontario, Canada.
Greetings, I'm Damien, also known as Magical Hack in some circles, and it is pretty wild out here in London.
Yes. So guys, like I said, this is the tabletop role-playing game show right here in Guelph's Community Radio that talks about, it's not just Dungeons and Dragons, it's not just cyberpunk, it's not just Battletech. Sometimes we like to expand our horizons. And here on the show, I have a pretty wide connection of friends out in the TTRPG industry. I know line editors, developers, writers, artists, all sorts of interesting people. And sometimes I get a little tap on the shoulder from some of these friendos in the industry and saying, hey, I got some people that you may want to chat with. What do you think? And well, as fortuitous as timing would be, since me and Damien started doing the Spellbook, fortunately, we got hooked up from some good friends over at the company Green Ronin. So many moons ago, I had a chance to chat with Nicole here on the show, Nicole Lindros. I also talked with Chris Pramis, and we talked about all sorts of different things here on the show. We've talked about Freeport, we've talked about stuff in the world of darkness, and we've talked about all sorts of other things during the course of their career. But Nicole sent me a message a little while ago saying, hey, we're launching the Kickstarter for Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition. And immediately my ears were like, ooh, I like superheroes. So through a series of emails and dealing with schedules, because if there ever is any big bad in the tabletop industry, it's always the dark evil of the ancient scheduling dragon. We were able to line things up. So me and Damien would love to welcome to the show two wonderful people from Green Ronin. I'd like to welcome Steve Kenson and Alexander Thomas, and these guys are going to be chatting with us over the course of the next hour about Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, very excited.
Yeah, guys, it's really exciting to get a chance to talk with people who are launching updates to games that have been around forever. Like Mutants and Masterminds is one of those games I have seen on the shelves of my local gaming for quite some time. I haven't had a chance to play as much as I would like. I did play an older edition, I want to say 2nd, and then I did play the DC Adventures version of it probably about 8 or 9 years ago. Damien, what about you? Have you ever had a chance to play with Mutants and Masterminds?
Unfortunately, no, I haven't. And in looking through the materials here, I wish I would have. I know this is probably a fair bit different to older editions, but like the way it's set up, and we'll get into this in a hot minute, but the way it's set up, I really, really appreciate. It's awesome.
So let's talk about Mutants and Masterminds, Alex and Steve. So I guess let's get your origin stories before we get too far into the weeds of Earth Prime here, so to speak. So I'm going to start with Alex first, mostly because he's at the top of my screen, and that's alphabetical. Sorry, Steve. Where does your origin story begin with getting involved in RPG development, and how did you and Green Ronin eventually come to crossing swords to working together?
I don't talk about this a lot, but I was bitten by a radioactive D20 on a field trip. My origins with Green Ronin, I started publicly game mastering in 2011, and in 2012, I was at Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio, running some Mutants and Masterminds, and at that time, Steve was one of the guests of honor at the convention. And back then, they were putting the guests into people's games by lottery and telling them about 15 minutes before the game was supposed to start that, hey, is it cool if the designer of the game that you love is going to be there? And of course, I said yes, even though I had a handful of pre-gens and a half-remembered episode of Justice League Unlimited and basically just a paragraph of what the adventure was going to be. And we had a great time. Steve played Deadshot in a Suicide Squad game. That was a ton of fun. He got to have a heroic last stand against a Mazo as the heroes were trying to escape from the crashing watchtower. And afterwards, I went up to Steve and I said, hey, it looked like you had a really nice time. I would love to get into this industry. Do you have any writing opportunities? And he got me in touch with the line developer at the time for Mutants and Masterminds. I did a writing sample, and then I freelanced for M&M for about 12 years before I was brought on to be Crystal Frazier's assistant developer in early 2020. And when she retired in 2022, when she moved on, I was bumped up into her position, and I've been there ever since, really enjoying my time here at Green Ronin.
Well, I gotta say that that Radioactive D20 certainly picked smart, and it just seems to be a lot of people. That's how a lot of people get their starts. They talk to someone that they like, and more often than not, you just kind of rise through the ranks of not quite AIM or Hydra here in this case. It just kind of works out. That's really awesome. That definitely gives me hope. And I guess passing the buck over to Steve, you've been around the industry for quite some time. So where does your origin story start?
Well, in the ancient, distant history, I got started writing professionally in the industry in 1993.
Oh, wow.
And I freelanced for a number of years, working on games like Shadowrun and Earth Dawn, and pretty much everything that there was in the industry to freelance for at that point. And in the early aughts, after D&D 3rd Edition came out, I had a superhero setting that I had been designing. I had started designing it as a freelance project that fell through. And so I just continued sort of tinkering with it as just sort of a fun side project. And I was freelancing for Green Ronin. They got their start in 2000 with the open game license, and published one of the first two D&D licensed products for 3rd edition with Death in Freeport. And so I had been doing some freelance for them, and I was talking with Chris Pramus about this my side superhero project, and I was lamenting at the time that there weren't any active superhero games being published that I could really pitch it to. And Chris said, "Well, can I look at it?" And I said, "Sure." I sent him a copy, and he came back and said, "Hey, this is really good. How about, would you be interested in designing a superhero RPG? And if you want to use the open game license, which was all the rage at the time, we can cut you a 2-book deal. We'll do the game, and we'll do your setting book." And I was like, okay. And so I took the D20 SRD and molded it into a sort of superhero shape, and that became the first edition of Mutants and Masterminds, and we published the Freedom City source book shortly after that, and that was like 23 years ago.
Oh, wow. So when it comes to developing superhero games, there's been a number of them over the years. I mean, the one that I was most familiar with prior to Mutants and Masterminds was the old TSR Marvel Phase Rip.
Oh yeah.
And I think me and Damien, we've horsed around with the original DC heroes.
Yep.
We've seen some of the more different ones. I know another one I played was the Marvel Cortex version, which I never could wrap my head around. And I guess one question it'll be to Alex and Steve, to you both here, is what are some of the challenges in developing a supers game? Because you look at the differences between powers between Superman and the Punisher, for example. One can blow out the sun, depending on which version of the continuity you want to go with, and the other one has a 9mm and doesn't miss a shot too often. So super games seem like they would be ludicrously hard to power scale. How do you both approach developing something like this and have it as balanced as one could possibly do anyway?
Yeah,
Alex,
I think
after you.
I think for my part, the biggest challenge I've run into developing superhero content is not so much in the not so much in capturing the variety of the different kinds of superhero stories that there are. That's something that you really get into with your players with a very, very detailed session 0. I've found helps alleviate some of that, giving expectations for what kind of superhero story we're trying to tell. The biggest obstacle that I've encountered is trying to imbue the superhero philosophy to TTRPG players, because there's a lot of people who come to this genre from other genres that have certain tropes and expectations, like we're going to kill everybody and loot all the treasure and we'll level up and get more powerful, or never split the party, or if we lose we're going to die. And those are some of the things that are the hardest things to deprogram, I found, for players moving from sort of an epic fantasy RPG past experience into something a little more akin to the superhero genre, and finding ways to encourage genre-specific gameplay. That's sort of when you get into that and you establish trust with the players, a lot of the other stuff sort of falls into place for like power disparity and dealing with different expectations and things like that related to the genre itself.
Yeah, I agree. I just recently, over on my Patreon, restarted a series I had been doing about taking superhero media, different cartoons, and basically looking at them from a tabletop game design perspective. And this is kind of relevant because I just went through the first episode of Justice League Unlimited, and I remember having a bit in there where I was saying, if you need a character to make an impossible shot in order to solve the challenge of this adventure, you don't call Superman. It was an adventure where Supergirl, Captain Atom, and Green Arrow are up against this giant atomic monster, and it all hinges on Green Arrow being able to shoot a carbon control rod into the reactor from 100 meters away. Because it's the way to defeat the thing, and that's why Green Arrow is important in the adventure.
Yeah, I kind of like that approach to like thinking like, okay, how do we adapt this particular piece of media and how does that kind of function? And we're definitely going to follow up on thoughts of this as me and Damien are welcoming Alex and Steve to the Spellbook right here on Guelph Community Radio 93.3 CFRU in the lovely city of Guelph, Ontario, Canada. We will be taking a break here, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Alex and Steve and Damien, and we're going to get into the guts of Mutants and Masterminds superhero media, what it takes to develop an RPG, and what makes it fun, and the challenges of Kickstarter, and more so beyond. We will be back right here on Guelph Community Radio, CFRU 93.3. I've been Mike the Birdman Askwey, joined with Damien Magical Hack Morphit. We'll be back right after whatever this is.
We are Paisley Road Public School with our grade 4 class.
And you're listening to CFRU!
Welcome back to the Spellbook, only on Guelph Community Radio 93.3 FM, also syndicated on thisweekingeek.net, home of one of Canada's longest running podcasts. I am Mike the Birdman Askwey, joined by my compatriot and friend of the Feywild, Damien Magical Hat Morphit, and over the last little bit, we have been chatting with Alex and Steve from Green Ronin to talk about the Kickstarter for Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition. So I'm going to pass things over to Damien. You're not a sidekick. We work together. We're kind of like Superman and Batman. So I'm going to throw you the ball here and let you run with it. So take it away, Dark Knight of London.
Alrighty. First off, thank you very much. Secondly, before I go too much further, one of the things that in reading through the materials here, I saw that I really, really appreciated. Well, there's two things. First off, the big disclaimer right at the outset about no AI content. As somebody who has opinions about AI, I appreciate that wholeheartedly. Now, what's other than the obvious, what was your reasoning for not dipping into that well, as we shall call it?
Yeah, Alex. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I hope this isn't a controversial take, but I will never support burning all of the planet's drinkable water in order to skip the hard part of learning how to do your job.
Yeah, I mean
maybe
that
that's
well is
spicy for the
poisonous.
radio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve and I have Steve's put in more work than me, just by virtue of being alive longer than me. But we've worked long and hard to learn the skill of creating RPGs and providing text, and I don't know, losing the human element of what we do, it defeats the entire purpose of what we're doing. Like, the creation is the fun part of the work, for me at least. I won't speak for Steve, but yeah,
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Green Ronin very early on agreed company-wide that our policy would be absolutely no AI generated content in anything we did, just because of the numerous reasons why that technology is simply unviable. It's trained on stolen content. It's an environmental menace, and it requires a crazy amount of electricity and water to run it. So yeah.
And if destroying the planet isn't reason enough, it's not smart enough to develop something at the length that we have created.
Right. Plus, on top of it all, it also doesn't work.
Yeah.
And yeah,
they can't do a 100,000 word manuscript. It doesn't have the memory for it. Like,
yeah, definitely. And that's, like I said, that's one of the things that I really appreciate, because I find too often nowadays people are dipping into that poisoned well, as it were, and it's unfortunate. Now, one of the other things that I noticed in again going through the book, you guys do something that I haven't seen a lot of other systems do, which is you front load a lot of the stuff that a player and a GM will need to know within the first chapter.
Yeah.
Generally, I've noticed most books will put that at like chapter 5, chapter 6, well after like character creation, and kind of bury it. What was your well, basically, what was your why did you choose to front load that information rather than leave it in the background?
Well, the central, what we call the basics chapter, is really just that. It's acquainting you with where everything is in the system. What die you're going to be rolling, what you're going to be adding to, what you're looking for as a result. The really core mechanics of how the system work, because that's what everything that follows is built off of. So it's really just giving you an orientation, so you have a good enough sense of the system, in its essence, so that everything that we explain after that hopefully makes more sense.
I really wish more TTRPGs did that, because yeah, like it makes it, at least for me, and I'm sure Mike, you may agree on this, but at least for me, it makes it more approachable.
Yeah, like
Sorry, go ahead.
When you said that, like one of the things that really caught my attention through the material that we had a chance to review prior to this interview is I was like, as much as I love lore and a setting, I need to know how simple the system is to learn. And when I looked at like, here is your D20, here's your modifiers. One thing I got hung up on for a second when I was looking at degrees of success, I was like, oh God, how does math work? And then I'm like, if you beat the difficulty number in integrals of 5, there's 1 success, 2 success, 3 success, etc. I'm thinking, I like that. I don't have to math because again, I'm a broadcaster, math dumb. And I'm looking at it thinking, I get it. Like honestly, reading that through my friendly local game store, that's enough to sell me on a system. If I can easily teach it literally in 5 minutes, you already have my money. Please come back with my wallet. And yeah, that's one thing I really liked about this. It was easily front loaded. And I guess my follow-up question to Damien's, when you're developing a system, especially now, because there are so many different RPGs out there, some of them really crunchy and math heavy, some of them are very narrative and, you know, almost diceless. And there are diceless RPGs out there. Where do you guys decide between I want narrative and I want flash and I want action, very much like the AGE system you guys have, and math that makes sense to please the people who like, you know, engineering stuff and like spreadsheets. So where do you find that balance?
I do think that we strike a pretty good chord between the two extremes, because the chief mechanic of the game is just a d20 plus a number versus a difficulty check. The higher you roll, the better you do. The lower you roll, the worse you do. It's very easy to generate narrative cinematic action. The difficulty factor in the past editions of Mutants and Masterminds comes from the point buy system for character creation, where all of that math is front loaded during character creation so that you can play a very simple game. And I think we've taken some very good steps in the new edition to alleviate some of that learning curve for people. We have a very robust archetype system in the new edition that basically there's 15 different types of superheroes that are recognizable to people. You could pick an archetype and then walk through, basically pick this word or pick this word, and it will give you a viable character that is mathematically correct to start playing the game immediately before you need to learn how to do the point buy system, so that once you're invested in playing the game, you can go back and learn how to build a character with the building blocks. So there's a little bit of a safety rail section in the beginning for folks just learning how to play the game now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the core elements of the game is that our ranking system is built out in an exponential fashion, so that different things that are measured by rank essentially double as the ranks progress, whether it's mass or distance or what have you. And amongst other things, that allows us to have both metric and imperial measurements associated with ranks, so you can use whichever one you prefer. And we, in this current edition, we also added a benchmark table that provides a lot of examples of what those ranks are. So if you're not going to be as into the numbers, and you don't really want to know that, you know, rank 15 mass is around 800 tons, but you'd rather know that it's about what a loaded Boeing 747 weighs, then you can just work off of the benchmark table and get a rough idea of, you know, oh, that's, you know, about the height of the Washington Monument, or that's about, you know, as much as a you know, truck weighs, those sorts of things.
Yeah,
Now-
I've been lovingly referring to that as the this is the large rock the size of a small boulder table.
Yes, exactly.
So when you guys were developing the archetype, you said you've got about, like you said, like 14 or 15 of those. How were you deciding, like, I don't know, Green Arrow is this, Daredevil is this, Invincible is this? How do you look at all the various superhero media, and how do you figure out, archetypes, because like, you might have people disagree. Well, maybe Batman's different from Captain America because of their fighting ability and like that,
Sure.
like sort of thing.
What, superhero nerds disagree about things?
Right?
Yeah, I know. Right?
You don't say.
News to me, preposterous.
Right? A lot of the archetypes are just about looking for commonality and looking at a bunch of different superheroes and saying what are the common things that you can find among the superheroes who are really strong and invulnerable. We've got the Paragon, archetype, who is more of the they're strong and they're really tough, but they do other stuff because they can usually fly, or they have super senses, or they have some other sort of gimmick in addition to that. And you've got the powerhouse archetype, who is being strong and tough is their thing, and that's pretty much all they do. That's sort of the difference between your Superman and Invincible, and your Hulk and the Thing, for example.
So
Here's a question.
Oh, yep. Go ahead, Damien.
Which archetype would you say the Tick?
I think the Tick's a powerhouse for the most part, because he's strong and tough and jumps really far, but that's pretty much the extent of it.
Oh no, Steve, we're going to disagree. I think he's a paragon because he's an inspiration to us all.
Well, yeah, there's that. There is that.
I love it. So, guys, we have a lot more to chat about with Alex and Steve from Green Ronin as we talk about Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition, along with my co-host, Damien Morfitt. Once again, I have been Mike the Birdman Ashby, and you are listening to Guelph's Community Radio 93.3 CFRU, the Royal City, the Bard's College or University of Guelph. Anyway, guys, we will be taking a small break right here on the Spellbook, and we got a lot more mutants and masterminds and all sorts of cool stuff coming right up on the break. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
If you're looking for power, you certainly come to the right place, because you are listening to CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph. 250 watts of community power.
Welcome back to the Spellbook right here on CFRU 93.3 Guelph Community Radio. I'm Damien, Magical Hack Morfitt, joined by Mike, the Birdman Ashby, with a couple of wonderful guests from Green Ronin.
That's right, guys. We are talking with Steve Kennison. He is the designer of Mutants and Masterminds, and also talking with Alexander Thomas, who is one of the developers on the project. And over the course of the last half hour, we've been chatting about all things Mutants and Masterminds. But let's get a little bit into the weeds of Mutants and Masterminds. And I would love to know, tell me more about the lore and the setting, because Mutants and Masterminds, it's a wonderful name. It's a generic but inviting name that wants you to come into the universe. It's not Marvel. It's not DC. It's its own thing, but its own heroes and villains can stand apart as their own unique creatures. And there's more than a few guys there, I think, that could take Superman in a fight. So what is the lore of Mutants and Masterminds?
Well, the thing about Mutants and Masterminds is that it was designed, although it was designed to help publish a setting, it was also designed to be a genre game rather than one that was connected to a specific setting. So much like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, which has many of its own worlds, the Mutants and Masterminds, the game, is intended to be a superhero game for whatever superhero setting or adventures you want to do. That said, we do have the Earth Prime setting, which started with Freedom City. That has been Mutants and Masterminds' longest running setting. And we've also had a number of licensed settings, including DC Comics, and the Wildcards setting at one point, both many years ago. And we have other settings we're working on coming up in the future, like Alex's Titan City setting. So So I guess that was a really long way of saying, which lore would you like to know about?
Honestly, I'd love to hear both because I love world building, and what I mean by that is when I create a supers game, especially supers games, I almost find a little bit easier to create because I don't have a continuity lawyer barking in my ear about Mr. Fantastic can't possibly be fighting Dr. Doom at this time, or I don't have someone in my ear saying, "Well, Doomsday was killed by this. He couldn't possibly." Yeah, I like the idea where I don't have 50 years of comic history weighing me down. I have what's presented in the books by authors and creators like you both.
Right.
So yeah, let's start with Titan City, and then we'll go to Freedom City. We'll take the highway, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, Titan City is my fantasy noir setting that I've been developing for Mutants and Masterminds. That's going to be coming soon. We have a couple of adventures, published adventures set in the setting, but essentially in 1908, the whole world found out that magic and monsters are real, and they've been doing their best to deal with it for the last 20 years. That's currently the Roaring Twenties. There is a Department of Monster Affairs who oversees the integration of monsters and magic users and all that sort. Throughout the world. Titan City itself is an East Coast metropolis that happens to be the biggest concentration of monster and magic user population throughout the world. Features detectives and necromancers and costume crime fighters that are just two-fisted sort of guys like the Shadow and Doc Savage, all those sorts of things. Very pulp noir, urban fantasy vibes all mixed together.
I love that. When you were developing Titan City, why specifically the 1920s? Like, I love that Call of Cthulhu-esque vibe, but I've never thought about mixing it with superheroes. What were some of your inspirations for that?
Yeah, so there's I felt, because I was developing Titan City a little bit independent of my career with Green Ronin to begin with, I felt that Mutants and Masterminds did a very great coverage of sort of the golden age of comic books forward, starting with World War II and moving up to the modern day, where the sort of quasi-dawn of superheroes, like the late 1920s, early 1930s, was an area that had room for exploration. And I wanted to develop something of a progressive period piece that could be a fun place for people to explore the tropes and the archetypes of the Roaring Twenties without necessarily the baggage that comes with it. I wanted to tell the story of people like us who existed in the 20s who maybe have been erased from history in that brief period, or have had their stories co-opted by other people, and finding ways to express that identity. I've always been a big history fan. I've always been a fan of sort of mobster classics and noir movies and things like that. And I wanted to bring some fun to people who haven't necessarily had the chance to experience that wonderful sort of Gilded Age setting.
Yeah, just when you were talking there about your setting, I kind of had these ideas of like Dick Tracy, the Shadow, even like Flash Gordon. And then when you mentioned you were a history buff, and specifically because the setting is so close to major events in our own world, what would the world wars have looked like with superheroes involved? And I immediately thought of the Rocketeer with, like, the jetpack and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, I love the Rocketeer. A brief example of one way the First World War was different. Austria-Hungary fell to a necromancer cult that created a zombie apocalypse across Eastern Europe that the Allies had to send wizards to go solve. So that's a fun thing to add.
Oh, rad. Oh my God, that's so cool. All right, so now that you've decimated most of Eastern Europe, we take the other side, and tell me more about Freedom City.
So Freedom City is basically just sort of my love letter to superhero comics. It's all the things I love about superheroes in one place. The high concept started out as a city that somehow got largely destroyed and rebuilt, and that is a big part of Freedom City's relatively recent history, where one of the classic superhero crises called the Terminus Invasion happens and the world nearly gets destroyed, and much of the city gets destroyed in the process, and how the city rebuilds and comes back better and stronger, and how one of the characters in the setting called Dr. Metropolis arises out of that. He's essentially the spirit of cities, and is one of the prime movers for helping the city literally heal itself from that event.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the things that I know, like from myself anyway. I find that a lot of superhero media in general just kind of glosses over. Is what happens after the fight?
Yeah.
Generally, there's a
Yeah.
lot of damage.
Yep.
Having a Dr. Metropolis in your pocket really helps with that as a GM.
Yeah, and that's literally part of the, from a game master perspective, why Dr. Metropolis exists, is he's the in-setting reason why a lot of that city damage gets fixed so quickly. So if you're running a game set in Freedom City and you want to just skip ahead and say in the next game, oh yeah, all that damage from your last knockdown drag out downtown is all fine now. You've got a good excuse for it.
That's really cool. I mean, I love having the finger of God if I need it, or if I need my own pocket damage control. I'm good to go. I like that. So one of the questions I want to ask you too. So obviously this is the 4th edition of Mutants and Masterminds. We've had 1, 2, and 3. And that was a Kickstarter, or this is a Kickstarter project. Now, your Kickstarter ends on March 5th. You guys have already smashed through so many of your stretch goals. And to tell a brief personal story, these guys had a option to have your own character created in the world of Mutants and Masterminds, and immediately dove across the room to grab my credit card. I'm just about to put in my information in the Kickstarter. It sells out within seconds. So, ouch. And then number 2, recently these guys added more, so more people can add their creations to this awesome game. And my wife slapped my phone out of my hand. So I get the feeling like the forces of creation are conspiring against me, because God damn it, I want my hero. But anyway, Kickstarter provides a unique platform for creators and developers to bring these wonderful games to life, to update editions. And I guess in the current environment, Kickstarter can be challenging, right? Like, are you going to meet your funding goals? What are you going to do with fulfillment, and to speak nothing of the current situation when it deals with overseas and tariffs and stuff coming in? I guess I'd love to hear about what are some of the challenges, but also some of the rewarding bits that have come out of working with Kickstarter. Because just by reading your Kickstarter page, you guys have such a supportive community.
We do. Actually, that's the real benefit of working with crowdfunding, is we have a tremendously supportive community. And they're so fired up and excited about the Kickstarter that it really gets us excited again, because by the time that ideally by the time a project gets to crowdfunding, it's been worked on for a while, you hope. And that's the case with 4th edition. We came to Kickstarter with essentially a complete finished game that we just need to produce. And so by that point, you're really tired. You've been working on this a long while, and largely in isolation, although we were fortunate that we got to do an extended playtest over the fall, which really kind of started off this process. So it's really great to have all of that work finally out in front of people and have them excited about it and really fired up about it. And that is really the sort of break you need to be like, okay, like we can get back into this and we can finish this and move on.
Yeah, I totally agree. The community is 100% the reason that we keep moving. They're so supportive. They're so excited, and seeing the energy and the compassion they bring, that really, it makes all the hard stuff beforehand really worth it.
Now,
Yeah, I'm
I have
I'm fortunate that I get to work alongside Steve, so I don't have to do it all by myself, and he doesn't have to
Likewise.
do it all by himself.
As somebody who has dabbled in making my own TTRPG system, doing it all on your own is painful.
Mhm.
Now, my question here, because like we've looked through the provided materials. What changes have come from like your playtesting and stuff like that?
Oh, far too many to for us to talk about in the time we've got. But
Notable changes.
yes. A lot of times it's really about there. In my experience, are two basic kinds of changes you get out of playtesting. One is the purely mechanical changes, where it's like, okay, the feedback shows that this doesn't work the way it's supposed to. We had a system for dice modifiers that was applied more widely in the initial draft, but it doesn't work with some of the subsystems of the game. And playtesters pointed that out, and they were absolutely right. And so we made some changes there. The other sort of feedback that you get from playtesting is much more of a flavor kind of reaction. And that's a little harder to quantify because it's not really about, does this math work? It's more about, do people like this? And sometimes you're like, let's give this a try. And you're like, oh, okay, people really don't like this. So we're not going to do that. Or, in some cases you're put it out there, people really do like it. And that is also really valuable feedback because so much of the TTRPG experience isn't solely about how the numbers add up, but how the game feels.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty clever thing by having the playtest launch around Gen Con, because I got to run a few playtest games with the new rules at Gen Con last year, and found some pretty fun things that immediately I was like, oh, when the rubber hits the road, this doesn't work the way that we thought it did.
Right.
Or this is an interesting interaction. And just the volume of feedback we got over on, we have a community place called the Atomic Think Tank online. The volume that we got really allowed us to find commonalities in things so that we could account for taste versus, a lot of people are bringing this up. Maybe it's something we really need to look at. And I was also glad that we did it at Gen Con because that's one of the few times a year that Steve and I are in the same place physically. So we were able to convey feedback back and forth and go over notes together, which was always better than online.
Right there, guys, we are to take another small break here on the Spellbook, right here on CFRU 93.3 Guelph Community Radio. Once again, we are joined with Alex and Steve from Green Ronin talking Mutants and Masterminds. And as we come back into the final break, we're going to talk about a few more things about Kickstarter, but what we can look forward to from this awesome game as we continue into 2026. Once again, I've been joined with Damien, Magical Hack Morphit. I've been Mike the Birdman. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
Hi, I'm Blender's Public, and I listen to CFRU to hear a mix of local content that I'm not going to hear anywhere else. I'm CFRU, are you?
So, guys, over the course of the last 40 or so minutes, like I said, we've been chatting about so many different things about archetypes and dice systems and what's changed from playtesting. And there's so much goes into this, it's a little intimidating. So, like, as you guys are approaching your Kickstarter end, which is going to be on March 5th, what has been the most surprising thing that has come out of your community, or what stretch goals are you the most happy that got fulfilled so far? Thinking, oh, I can't wait to work on this, or it's already done. Here you go.
Well, I think the one that everybody is most excited about is the Earth Prime Gazette.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that's going to unveil all the information, or some of the information. I shouldn't say all the information.
I was going to
about
say
the changes that are coming to the Earth Prime setting in 4th edition. I don't want to make promises that Steve has to cash.
Right. I was just going to say, we're not going to get all of it in that book, but honestly, the things I'm most excited about were actually part of our initial campaign, because we're doing Kickstarter and because we're doing add-ons and things like that. We get to do stuff like making custom hero point tokens and our custom reaction token for game table play. And I honestly want that stuff for myself. So I'm really super glad that we got funded and we're doing it so that, I can get my set.
Mm-hmm. As a convention GM, when you have those metal tokens, please do not throw them at me.
Yes, please hand the metal tokens to your GM.
They throw the poker chips. I'm worried about the shuriken we're handing them. And I'm also really excited about all the folks who signed up to play with me. I wasn't sure if there was any interest in that, but seeing that all the tickets are gone, I'm surprised and excited to get the chance to play with some of our fans.
Yeah, I was so surprised that sold out as quickly as it did. Again, as my phone was being slapped out of my hand, my wife just walked into the room shooting her daggers. I was getting ready to sign up for that as well, and it was like, no. But that's so fun, though. Just the fact that your community is so enthusiastic to play a game. And again, I think there's something magical about a supers game that's a little bit different in vibe and tone from playing D&D, stuff like that. And what I mean in the most positive sense is when we were all kind of grown up playing Pretend, how many of us played superheroes? And it's a little bit different when you're playing D&D. I have my +1 Vorpal sort of whatever. But, everybody's thought, what if I could fly like Superman? What if I could fight crime like Batman? There's something just superhero games hit differently that I find. And it's so interesting. Just the fact that you guys, again, have two separate settings. One that's the more modern Earth Prime, but you also have the Titan City, which is more historical. And I love the fact that it scratches those two unique itches during that. So I guess as we start to wind things down here on the show, tell me about some of the more interesting things that have come out of your time working in this setting. And what I mean by that is, what is the coolest hero you've seen, or weird abuse of the rules that works, or what is the most absurd thing you've ever seen?
Oh man. I've run thousands of M&M games at this point in my life.
What has traumatized you, Alex? Please tell me.
Oh God, we could be here all day.
Yeah. I'll say I have two things that I'll bring up. One, it's not an Earth Prime or a Titan City thing, but I have run Harley Quinn the musical as an adventure in Mutants and Masterminds several times now, and that is always a hoot and a half. There's one fight scene in that adventure where they have to fight 54 Tom Cruises, and the more Tom Cruises you defeat, the bigger they get until they're a whopping 5'3" at the end.
Awesome.
The weirdest thing I've ever done as a game master is probably when we started a fight involving in Earth Prime. There's something called the Source Book, which in my version of Earth Prime is just the Mutants and Masterminds handbook hidden away in a library at the edge of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And
see, Alex, you got the inside joke.
Yeah. The players destroyed part of that book, and it was the part that contained the rules for magic, and they were all magic superheroes. So magic turned off in the world until they were able to make it to Steve's house and get another copy of the book from him directly, and come and bring it back to the universe for them to repair their world, which was fun.
That is beyond meta.
I
love that. gonna go to Steve's house and rescue a book. What? Oh my god. And Steve, what about you? What is the weirdest or most absurd thing you've seen? I don't know if you can top Magical Plum Cruise.
I was going to
but I'm
say, I
curious.
really can't follow Alex on that one because I'm super boring when it comes to that kind of stuff. Wow, what is the most absurd thing I've seen? I'm trying to think. Honestly, they're all in Alex's adventures. I mean, Alex also, ran a robot cage match adventure that, involved Doomba, the, sentient vacuum, who was, a huge fan favorite after that.
I love Doomba so much.
Yes.
I'm so
He just
stealing
wants
that.
to. He
I
just
love
wants
it.
to conquer the world for his maker.
Right.
In about 30 minutes, I'll be online playing a Rooster Elvis Presley in a Mutants and Masterminds game. Like, there's so many things you could do in this,
I can't
in
follow
this game.
Alex on that.
Yeah, I wish you could see my face right now. I'm like, what? So I guess that kind of brings me to my final question for both of you. And I'm sure Damien will want to jump in with one final one. I guess as people are developing their Mutants and Masterminds setting, or if they're running any superhero game, what is the best piece of advice you could give to someone? Like, and just to give you an example how I'm framing this question, I am example, if I run a supers game, I'm incredibly intimidated because, again, I mentioned the continuity lawyer. I don't want someone saying you can't do X, Y, Z, but I want to make a fantastic world for my friends where we can be larger than life. That literal David Bowie, we can be heroes. How do I run this game to really bring my friends' excitement up and really make them feel like they're doing something outstanding?
I think that a lot of it is a combination of buy-in right from the start, and you have to get everybody on board. Like Alex said earlier, superheroes have a different vibe to them than a lot of RPGs, and so you have to be right from the start. This is the kind of superhero game we're going to play, and get everybody on board with that, because there's so many different kinds of superhero comics and stories. It's really important to get a sense of everybody's expectations. And then in the game, you can use the hero point system to help reward that behavior. It's really as simple as essentially tossing players a cookie whenever they do the right thing. If they're doing heroic stuff in a larger than life heroic context, yeah, here, have a hero point. Congratulations, and it encourages that behavior.
Yeah, I agree. Encourage the behavior, reward the behavior you want to see is always good advice. I also, for me personally, I always try to remember that my players will give the energy that I give. They're looking to me as the game master to set a tone and to see, are we doing this right? Are we playing right? I know that's a silly question to ask, but a lot of people get caught up in being self-conscious about it. And if you embrace what makes the superhero genre so fun and exciting and compelling, your players will dive into that. And don't be afraid to use familiar tropes. There's a reason that you and your friends enjoy superheroes. Even if they recognize what you're doing, if you execute it well, they won't be upset about it. They're tropes for a reason. They have endured in stories over and over and over again because we like it. So don't be afraid of that. And just lean in, reward the behavior you want to see, and just have the energy that you want your players to have. That's always my advice for new GMs for any genre.
That is definitely awesome advice, and I myself appreciate it because that's the way I look at it myself. I think the only real question that I have, and as we spoke before we started recording here, I'm more of the crunch guy, and I'd mentioned that I myself have dabbled in creating a TTRPG. What sort of advice would you give to somebody who wants to make their own system?
I guess it would be to start out deciding what it is you want that system to do. Systems are intended to, create certain kinds of results. And so it's usually best. I mean, sometimes you'll start a system with a gimmick or a notion of, like, I think it's really interesting the way these die rolls interact or that kind of thing. But usually, you're going to come up with something along the lines of, I want to produce a game that does X. And so I would start with that and focusing on that, and look at how the system, basically does that. Beyond the initial starting concept, I would say you really want to take whatever it is you come up with and take it to the game table and just play the heck out of it. I mean, because like Alex says, when the rubber meets the road, that's when you start finding out what really works.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I want to say something that Steve taught me early in my career, which was be a student of games. Read lots of games, absorb information, become a scholar of the subject of fun. People are coming to your game to be entertained. What do you like about games? What do you think your friends like about games? Ask questions. Look at the games that you're picking up and dissect them. Figure out, what are these rules trying to encourage my players to do? Because at the end of the day, the rules are a framework for telling a story rather than a box to stuff a story into, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll also add on, one thing that has served me immensely in my career as a developer is being an active game master, playing a lot of games, running a lot of games. I think that will give you a little bit of insight that some people have missed out on in the industry, because a lot of people develop more than they run, and I think sometimes they get a little disconnected from the actual experience of it, the sort of hands-on notion of what we're doing. Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's some fantastic advice, guys. So once again, your Kickstarter closes on March 5th. We will definitely be asking you guys back at the conclusion and just when the game fully launches, I believe in November, correct?
Yeah, that's the plan.
All right, there, guys. So once again, that is Alex and Steve from Green Ronin. Go check them out on Kickstarter. You only have a little bit left to do that. So for the Spellbook, me and Damien have to teleport out of here to the Watchtower, the Hall of Justice, wherever Spider-Man hangs out. We're out of here. So for the Spellbook, we have been.
I am Damien, Magical Hack Morphit.
I am Mike the Birdman, saying, be excellent to each other, especially in these trying times. And once again, you've been listening to 93.3 CFRU Guelph Community Radio. Beware of Doomba.
It's not enough. We have a gallery of villains to look out for, but now we could be infiltrated by a shape changer. I can't even tell if any of you are acting strange because you've been replaced or because this group is full of weirdos.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Spellbook. If you happen to have any comments or suggestions, please send us an email at thespellbookshow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're hungry for more, you can find Mike at thisweekingeek.net, covering a variety of nerdy topics, and Damien on YouTube at Magical Hack Makes for more TTRPG conversation.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.